South Carolina. It has a huge national forest that isn't accessible always to cars. It's called Sumter National Forest, and it is half an hour outside capital Columbia, South Carolina. Our story takes place in 2011, and the first person we're going to talk about is the victim, and his name was John Mayers. Now, John Mayers was described as athletic and charismatic and a very likable person all around. He had a little bit of a rough childhood in the fact that he had his first kid at 14, and by the age of 20, he had 3 total. They all were living at his parents' house, and his mother happily took care of the kids. They were one big happy family despite John's very young age. Courtney Mayer, which was John's daughter, spoke to John the Saturday before Mother's Day and told everybody, "I'll be cooking tomorrow, so everybody should be by." A thing to note about this was John's cooking was famous. Everybody in the family loved it and looked forward to it. Now, not only was this Mother's Day, it was a Sunday, which was already considered a sacred day in the Mayers household. So everybody was expecting good things to be going down May 8th, 2011. Unfortunately, that next day, Courtney showed up to go see her dad and her grandparents, which I said they all lived together at this point. And she said she didn't smell his cooking, which was a disappointment, and he just wasn't there. This made John's kids very suspicious. Like I said before, Mother's Day was a huge deal to him because of how well his mother helped him out in his life, and it was also a Sunday. So it was a very sacred day, and for him to not be there, everybody started getting concerned really quick. So 3 days after Mother's Day, a patrolling police officer sees a man wave him down, and when he approaches him, he said that his son, John Mayer, had been missing for 3 days, and they were starting to get concerned at this point, and rightfully so. Now, a name that everybody kept bringing up, and will be the second player in this story, was Mandy Smith. Now, let me give you a little bit of background on Mandy Smith. A little bit about Mandy. She was the middle of 5 kids and often complained about feeling neglected as a child because there were so many other children. She always felt like her mother didn't pay the attention that she felt she was due. As a young teenager, Mandy ran away multiple times. As a matter of fact, she ran away so many times, she actually ended up in a group home for troubled youths. It didn't take long till she also ran away from the group home. After she ran away from this group home, she at one point ran into John Mayers, which was the first person we were talking about in this. Now, John was roughly 10 years older than Mandy, and like I said, already had several children of his own. So at this point, Mandy is a young teenager running around, and John brings her back to him and his parents' house and actually just includes her like one of the kids. They take care of her, give her food, shelter, and she just kind of becomes part of the family. So after a couple years, it is said that Mandy had developed a crush on John, even despite the age difference and him almost being a brother or father figure. She somehow developed feelings for him, and she would do everything she could to hang out with him. So she would step in and help watch the younger kids, and then she would find ways, even if it was just going to the store, to hang out with John. So at some point, John took advantage of this, and they had some sort of relationship. At first, it sounded like it was just sexual because it was easy for John to have, and it doesn't sound like she was quite of age yet, but that was a relationship between John and Mandy at this time. At this point, John's mother notices this and tries to kick Mandy out, but no matter how hard she tries, she just keeps coming back. So Mandy stays here till she's roughly 18 and decides she wants to have a new start in life, and she leaves the Mayers family home. When Mandy leaves, she went back to Fort Benning, Georgia, and eventually found herself up in Michigan, where she married a man who was in the military, ended up going to Germany with him and then coming back. And that went on for several years. Mandy was completely out of the picture out here in South Carolina. During this time, John also got a job in Irmo, South Carolina, doing gardening work, landscaping work a lot, and seemed pretty stable and happy in his life for the time being. After roughly 10 years, Mandy gets divorced and comes back to South Carolina. And it said from the start, her and John started seeing each other again, but Mandy did not move in with John. She actually lived on her own and sounded like she was a bit of an animal hoarder, if I'm honest. She had 11 animals, and they ranged from pit bulls to iguanas, and it was just her in this house. Everybody called her an animal lover, but that seems like an absurd amount of pets. Maybe I'm wrong. So we're now finding ourselves back at the time when John went missing. And John's kids all knew that John had gotten back together, and that's why her name kept coming up when they were speaking to the police. Now, Courtney felt like she needed to do something to help find her dad. So she went down to the gas station where John often hung out and talked to a couple of the other guys who used to hang out there too, and she knew her father. And Courtney asked him, "Did you guys see my dad Saturday night?" And they all said, "Yes, we saw him, and we saw him get in a truck with Mandy." Now, at this point, Courtney goes, "Okay." So she drives over to where Mandy is living at this point, pulls up and confronts her. And she goes, "Mandy, everybody at the gas station was saying you were with my dad." And Mandy goes, "I haven't seen him since that Saturday afternoon." And, Mandy was kind of raised as one of the Myers kids, so Courtney said she just took her at her word. She felt like she could trust her enough she could do that. However, Courtney's brother, who is in the passenger seat with her, felt very, very suspicious of Mandy during this moment. So after Courtney had confronted Mandy would call the house often and ask if there was any update on John. She acted very concerned, very worried. It all looked really innocent and nice intentionally. When the cops looked further into Mandy, they had found she had filed a restraining order against John just a few months earlier. And this was something nobody knew about until the cops looked into it. So after the cops found this restraining order, they went and talked to John Mayer's family again. And it was rather interesting what they brought up. They said he had been dealing with an addiction to crack cocaine. He was literally scheduled to go to rehab, and they also said anytime Mandy came back into his life, he would spiral downwards. So though they had love for Mandy, she was also trouble because it seemed like they fed off each other. Because Mandy also did crack cocaine and marijuana, so they would go back and forth with that stuff, and that can crash your life pretty quick. So the whole family was concerned about it. So at this point, the cops have an address to go talk to Mandy at, and they pull up there and they find the house is completely empty, including Mandy and all of her stuff. Now the neighbors see the cops pull up and they go over and talk to them and say, "Just so you guys know, we saw 2 trucks going back and forth the last couple of days that was clearly helping move Mandy and her things. So just so you guys are aware of that." This was also during the time that John had gone missing, so it seemed all the more suspicious Mandy moving during this time period. So the cops found Mandy's cell phone and they called her, and she actually answered and spoke to them. And she said, "I'm currently living with a friend, Tim, who's right outside this national forest that I had brought up before." And so she said she needed to move and she was currently living with Tim. Now, a little bit of background on Tim. It's going to be slim, but here we go. Tim Weiss was a former Craigslist hookup of Mandy's. So apparently they were hooking up and then decided just to be really, really good friends. So during this time period, Mandy fled over to Tim's. And I guess she didn't really flee. She literally just moved, but she's looking suspicious, let's be real. So the cops go over to Tim's house, which Mandy is now living at, and she told the cops the same thing that she had told Courtney, John's daughter, and said that that Saturday afternoon was the last time that she had seen him. Now, the thing about this is it contradicted the guys at the gas station's witness account, right? So the cops didn't bring this up, but they're already noting that. And at this point, John's financial records were pulled, and they said the pattern that John had is he would get direct deposit and instantly start spending. That was the pattern that John had every time he got paid. But this last time he got paid and the money was just sitting there. So that was already a contradiction in his normal patterns and made the cops even more suspicious. The cops were then alerted that John Mayer's Buick LeSabre was at a scrapyard. They were able to trace the car to there. And this was obviously very strange. And the cops asked the scrapyard, who dropped off this car? And they said it was a man and a woman. So at this point, it's definitely looking like Tim and Mandy dropped off that LeSabre to the scrapyard. So after the cops went over and had talked to Mandy, Mandy was rearing to leave. So they go back over to Tim's, and by this point, it had been just a couple of days. Mandy had moved out of there. So they called her again, and she did answer. And she said, you know what? I'm going to be over there in about an hour. Well, an hour came and passed, and she never showed up. So they knew at this point, Mandy had gone on the run. So since Mandy is not very reachable at the moment and has clearly fled, the cops start talking to Tim again, and they ask him a few more questions. They go, do you know where John is? And Tim said, I have no idea. But Tim did admit he helped Mindy sell the car to the scrapyard. He signed for John's signature. He admitted to the forgery. Tim also said he let Mandy move in because she claimed she needed to escape from John, which was a very interesting thing to say. And Tim also said he let her borrow his 9mm handgun, and actually he had it at home. So he gave her that so that she could feel safe before she moved in with Tim. Tim said that Mandy had told her that John was currently her pimp because they were so in deep for this crack cocaine. They were both so addicted that John would literally pimp her out to make sure that they got the money for crack. This is a story that Mandy's telling Tim. This was also the whole reason why Mandy filed that restraining order, Tim said. So at this point, there's no body or anything, but they know for a fact that they can get Mandy on a forgery charge. So a warrant is put out for her arrest on the case of forgery. With the warrant out for her arrest, Mandy was soon found at her mother's house, and she didn't put up a fight or anything. She went peacefully into police custody at this point in time. Mandy is still claiming she has no idea what is up with John. And in the interviews, the cop that was the investigator / interrogator said there's usually one weak link in a case, and they felt like it was Tim. So they once again bring Tim in for questioning. And this time they noticed a few different things. They noted that he would not make eye contact at all anytime they asked where John was. And when they asked him, did Mandy kill John? He wouldn't give a straight answer. So they go, okay, figuratively, like if Mandy were to do it, what would she do? And Tim would go, well, if Mandy were to do it, we should probably look in Sumter National Forest. Tim also kept saying, well, if she did do it, it was probably for self-defense. So the investigator, whose idea it was to have Tim be interrogated again, has him right in the back of the patrol car and go to Sumter. So they pull into the Sumter National Forest, the entrance there, and the cop said they would pull up to forks in the road. And the cop would say, should I go left or right, Tim? And Tim easily knew his way around. He goes, you should go right here. And eventually, the cop had the idea to roll the windows down. And he said right when he did that, Tim took his shirt and put it over his nose. And he said a lot of times, that's how people signify guilt. They're showing more than they're letting on. And he knew it. And he said it was in the next few minutes, they could smell death. Now, I don't know if you guys know what I mean, but there is a scent of decomposition, and it was hitting them both in the face pretty strong. So at this point, they have Tim get out of the car, and he leads them roughly to where the cop can then track down where the scent is coming from. And what they come across is a decomposing body. Now, at this point, the body is deeply decomposed because it's been a while before they found the body. And also a thing of note is this body is missing its head. So we have a decapitating, decomposing body in Sumter National Forest. So with Tim leading them straight to the body, Tim is arrested for murder. And at this point, the investigator goes, dude, like, you're in big trouble. You better start talking, or this is all on you. So this is a story according to Tim. So Mandy had arranged for John to meet her at the gas station on May 7th. She told him that they were going to go have a romantic date or just go have sex, whatever. And John agrees to it. So she starts driving through Sumter National Forest, and they drive out there, and they go out, and Tim is out there too. So they're all out there smoking and talking. And Tim said he thought this was going on so that Mandy could have support when she broke up with John. Now, Tim said that Mandy did break up with John and then pulled a gun on him when John started to get angry that she was breaking up with him. And Tim claimed she shot him once, but it didn't kill him. So he started running into the forest, and Mandy chased after him. And they ran deep enough into the forest, Tim couldn't see him anymore. And then he heard a second gunshot. Then Mandy returned from the forest, and they left. After the cops had confronted Mandy at Tim's house, she got worried. So she went back out to the forest where she had shot John, removed his head, and threw it in the river so that they couldn't have any dental records to trace John with. This is all Tim's story. So after Tim's story came out, Mandy was arrested for murder. And she said, I admit it, I totally shot him. But I did it for self-defense because he was sexually abusing me and pimping me out. So I felt like I had no other choice but to do this. The crazy thing was, in the next few days, she went back into interrogation and completely recanted her story and said, actually, I really loved John. And I just said all that stuff because I was living with Tim. And actually, Tim ran up to us in the forest and shot John in the heat of passion. And he said if I told anybody, he'd kill all my animals. So this is a new bullshit story Mandy is giving us now. So October 7th, 2013, Mandy goes on trial for murder. Now, obviously the prosecution is bringing up her first story and leaning on that hard. However, her defense is trying to pin the entire thing on Tim. With that last confession, they were saying that was the actual story. And the cops said they couldn't confirm or deny who pulled the trigger. So they did have some weight to their argument. However, the verdict came back and Mandy was found guilty of murder. Now, the crappy part about her sentence is she was found guilty of murder, but she only got 40 years plus another 10 years for dismembering his body. So she didn't even get a fucking life sentence. She only got 50 years. And according to the aftermath that I looked into this, she will be 74 when she is eligible for parole. She didn't even get a fucking life sentence. And she killed this guy and eventually chopped his head off, a guy that raised her. Now, I'm not saying he was an angel in any way, but what an injustice. She clearly killed him, and that whole argument of women do get lighter sentences when it comes to the case of murder, I feel like is really shining through in this. I think it's absolutely wrong, and all of John's family was really upset by it because there's no way she should see the light of day again. If she's so willing to do that and treat other people like that, you know, shoot them, chop them up. And I know she was leaning on the self-defense thing, but she lured a man out and shot him. It's not like he was coming after her. The whole thing is terrible. I mean, what a mess. Thank you so much for watching my channel. I hope you guys enjoy the story. Do you have anything to add? Were you living there at the time? Did you know John and his family at all? Please feel free to comment below, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.